The night sky over Neo-Tokyo was alive with the vibrant hues of neon lights, reflecting off the sleek surfaces of towering skyscrapers. The city, a bustling hub of technology and culture, thrived in the harmony of human innovation. It was on such a night, under the luminous glow of a full moon, that the Grexians first descended from the skies. Their ships, colossal and shimmering, hovered silently above the city center, casting long shadows over the streets below. The Grexians, towering beings with iridescent scales that caught the moonlight in flashes of color, emerged with an air of solemn majesty. Humanity watched, breathless and wide-eyed, as these alien visitors approached with open hands, a universal gesture of peace. The world governments, quick to react, established a communication link with the Grexians, who spoke of their travels across the stars and their search for allies in the vast cosmos. An agreement was swiftly reached, allowing the Grexians to establish an embassy in what was deemed a neutral zone within Neo-Tokyo. For weeks, the city saw a flurry of activity and unprecedented cooperation. Humans and Grexians exchanged knowledge, technology, and culture. District 7, close to the embassy, became a melting pot of interstellar diplomacy. Street vendors sold dishes blending Earth ingredients with exotic spices from distant planets, while children played in the parks, teaching each other games from their respective worlds. However, amidst this utopian integration, not all were pleased. Small factions on both sides viewed the newcomers with suspicion and fear, whispering of the dangers of such rapid, unchecked integration. One fateful evening, Maya, an 8-year-old girl with an insatiable curiosity about the new visitors, slipped away from her mother at a market near the Grexian zone. She wandered into the embassy grounds, lured by the sight of a Grexian bioluminescent garden that shimmered in the twilight. Alerted to her presence, a Grexian guard, misunderstanding her intentions and acting out of instinctual fear, fatally wounded her. The incident, caught on a bystander's recording device, spread through the media like wildfire. The reaction was immediate and fierce. Grief turned to outrage as the footage of Maya's death circulated, her fall amidst the alien flora marking the end of an all-too-brief era of peace. Protesters filled the streets, and the global sentiment shifted from curiosity and hope to anger and demand for retribution. In the heart of this storm stood Jonah Barrett, a military strategist and Maya's father. Consumed by grief, his sorrow soon hardened into resolve. At his daughter's funeral, under the heavy skies of a rain-drenched morning, he whispered a vow over her coffin, promising not just justice but reparation for the innocents lost. The seeds of conflict were sown not by the arrival of the Grexians, but by the tragedy that unfolded in their midst, igniting a fury in humanity that would soon demand a devastating toll. In the weeks following the tragic incident in Neo-Tokyo, the atmosphere was tense, charged with a palpable sense of impending storm. The world watched as international debates flared, with leaders struggling to maintain a delicate peace. However, for Commander Jonah Barrett, the political discourse was nothing more than background noise to his personal saga of grief and anger. Inside a dimly lit room at the military base outside of Neo-Tokyo, Jonah convened a secret meeting with a select group of the world's most elite military strategists and pioneering scientists. Among them was Dr. Lena Morris, a renowned physicist known for her work in quantum mechanics and energy weapons. They gathered around a sleek holographic table, casting an eerie glow on their determined faces. Jonah stood at the head of the table, his voice steady but laced with a cold fury. "We've all seen what happened. My daughter was not the first casualty, and if we do not act, she will not be the last," he declared, his eyes sweeping over the group. "Our objective is clear. We need a deterrent, something that ensures no human life will ever again be taken so lightly." Dr. Morris nodded, understanding the weight of her role. "We've been developing theoretical models for a weapon that uses quantum destabilization. It's designed to penetrate energy shields, something the Grexians rely heavily on. With enough funding and resources, we can turn theory into reality." The room filled with a tense energy as plans began to form. They dubbed the project Retribution. It was to be a two-pronged approach. While the weapon was under development, Jonah would also organize a specialized strike force capable of employing such a device against any potential threats. This unit would be trained in secrecy, prepared for scenarios that they hoped would never come to pass. The meeting adjourned with each member knowing their part in the delicate balance of preparing for war while praying for peace. Over the following months, as Dr. Morris and her team worked in the shadows, Jonah recruited and trained his unit from the best of the global special forces. They were not just soldiers, they were guardians of humanity's right to coexist with alien visitors on equal terms. Meanwhile, public sentiment grew increasingly divided. Protests both for and against the Grexians became daily occurrences worldwide. The governments maintained a fragile liaison with the Grexian ambassadors, who vehemently condemned the act of their guard and offered reparations and promises of stricter controls. However, the damage was done, and trust, once broken, proved difficult to restore. As Jonah watched his team train from the observation deck of the facility, he couldn't help but feel the weight of the world on his shoulders. Each simulation, each test of the emerging technology, brought back flashes of Maya's laughter, her unbridled enthusiasm for life, and her tragic end. These memories fueled his resolve, hardening it into something unyielding and sharp. In the quiet solitude of his office, Jonah kept a single hologram rotating slowly, a picture of Maya, taken just a week before her death. It served as a reminder, not just of what was lost, but also of what lay at stake. "This is for you, Maya," he whispered into the stillness. "For you and for the future of all our children." With retribution slowly coming to life under the vigilant eyes of humanity's brightest, the world edged closer to a precipice. The question remained whether they would step back from the brink or plunge into the abyss. As months turned into a year since the tragic incident, the undercurrents of discontent and fear had brewed into a palpable storm. Across the globe, human-Grexian relations continued to deteriorate, with every minor incident between the two species igniting fresh outrage and fear. Despite this, Jonah's elite unit and the project codenamed Retribution progressed under a veil of utmost secrecy. Deep beneath the arid expanse of the Nevada desert, Dr. Lena Morris and her team worked tirelessly in a covert laboratory. Their mission was to bring Jonah's vision of a quantum energy weapon to fruition. The facility buzzed with activity, a hub of scientific endeavor fueled by a blend of desperation and innovation. "This prototype is ready for a field test," Dr. Morris announced during a secure video conference with Jonah and the project's oversight committee. On the screen, a sleek metallic device emitted a low hum, its core glowing with an intense blue light. Jonah, observing from his military base, nodded. "Proceed with caution, Lena. We can't afford any mistakes. The stakes are too high." Back in Neo-Tokyo, tensions flared as Jonah's special forces, now dubbed the Retribution Squad, underwent rigorous training. They simulated various scenarios, from hostage rescues involving Grexians to direct assaults on fortified extraterrestrial positions. Captain Michelle Zhao, a seasoned tactical officer and Jonah's second-in-command, drilled the team relentlessly. "We are the shield and the sword," Captain Zhao reminded her team during a debrief. "Humanity relies on us to be ready for whatever comes next. We train not just to fight, but to deter." Meanwhile, skirmishes along the borders of Grexian-controlled zones became more frequent. News of a small town in Europe evacuated after a standoff hit the headlines, stoking the flames of fear once again. The Grexians claimed it was a misunderstanding, but the damage to public opinion was irrevocable. It was during one such skirmish that Jonah's unit demonstrated their readiness. A Grexian patrol had wandered too close to a human settlement, and the situation escalated quickly. Jonah's team intervened with non-lethal force, managing to de-escalate the situation without casualties. The event was broadcast globally, showcasing the effectiveness and restraint of the human military, bolstering public support for more robust defenses. As Jonah watched the footage of the skirmish, he felt a grim satisfaction. His team was ready, but so was he, for the path they were on could only lead to one destination: conflict. It was a path he had hoped to avoid, but with each passing day, it seemed more inevitable. Back at the Nevada facility, Dr. Morris conducted the first field test of the prototype weapon. In a controlled environment, the device successfully breached a replica of Grexian energy shields. The test was a success, but it was also a sign that war was not just possible, it was approaching. "Excellent work, Lena," Jonah praised over their secure line after reviewing the test results. "Prepare for Phase 2. We need to be ready to deploy at a moment's notice." As Dr. Morris nodded in agreement, both knew that their creation, born out of tragedy and necessity, might soon be tested in real battle conditions. The storm was no longer rising. It had arrived, and with it the echo of Maya's laughter seemed both a distant memory and a clarion call to the uncertain future. As Earth's political climate heated and the rhetoric intensified, Jonah received intelligence about a significant Grexian military buildup at Luna Gateway, a strategic outpost on the moon that served as a forward operating base for their fleet. Realizing the potential threat to Earth's safety, Jonah proposed a preemptive strike to the Global Defense Council. With a heavy heart but unwavering resolve, he argued that taking out Luna Gateway would significantly cripple the Grexians' ability to launch a swift attack on Earth. The Council, after a heated debate, reluctantly approved the operation, codenamed Lunar Strike. Jonah knew the stakes. This mission could very well ignite a full-scale interstellar conflict, but the memory of Maya's untimely death and the looming threat fortified his determination. The Retribution Squad, along with a team of astronauts and combat engineers, embarked on a covert journey to the moon aboard a stealth spacecraft specially modified for this mission. Captain Michelle Zhao led the assault team, her face set in grim determination as she briefed her team one last time before disembarking. Remember, we're not just fighting for territory or pride. We're here to protect our home, our families. Let's make sure everyone comes back. The lunar surface, stark and shadowed, was deceptively tranquil as they approached Luna Gateway. Utilizing the newly developed quantum destabilizers, they managed to bypass the Grexian energy shields undetected. The battle commenced with an explosive surprise attack, crippling the Grexian communications tower first. Grexian soldiers caught off guard scrambled into defensive positions, returning fire with plasma weapons that illuminated the dark lunar plains. The Earth team used the rugged lunar terrain to their advantage, moving between craters and outcrops for cover. During the intense firefight, a crucial moment came when a Grexian counterattack cornered part of the human squad. Just as the situation seemed dire, an unexpected ally appeared. Zorax, a Grexian dissenter who had been secretly communicating with Jonah. Disgusted by his leader's aggressive policies, Zorax had decided to help Jonah, believing in a peaceful coexistence. "Human friends, follow me," Zorax shouted, leading the trapped soldiers through a concealed path to flank the Grexian forces. With Zorax's help, the tide turned. The human forces managed to infiltrate the central command of Luna Gateway, planting explosives that would render the base inoperable. As they retreated to their extraction point, the base behind them erupted in a series of controlled explosions, casting a bright light over the lunar surface. Back on Earth, Jonah watched the live feed, his heart pounding with a mix of pride and sorrow. The mission was a success, but it came at a cost. Lives were lost on both sides, and the repercussions would be significant. Upon their return, Captain Zhao reported the mission's success to Jonah personally. "We did what we had to do, sir. Let's just hope this brings them to the negotiating table instead of escalating further." Jonah nodded, knowing that hope was as volatile as the weapons they wielded. The success at Luna Gateway was a tactical victory, but the strategic consequences were yet to unfold. Would this bold move coerce the Grexians into diplomacy, or had they just sparked an interstellar war? In his office, Jonah replayed the footage of the battle, each explosion a reminder of the path they had chosen. With Zorax now publicly siding with humans, perhaps there was a chance for a diplomatic resolution. Yet, as he looked out the window at Earth hanging silently in space, Jonah couldn't help but wonder if they were on the brink of something far greater and more devastating. The aftermath of the Battle of Luna Gateway rippled through Earth's political and military structures like a shockwave. News of the victory, paired with the revelation of a Grexian ally, Zorax, stirred a mix of hope and apprehension among Earth's populace. Governments around the world grappled with the implications, debating whether this marked a turn towards inevitable war or a new path to peace. In the secretive confines of his office, Jonah met with Zorax and key military leaders to discuss the next steps. Zorax, with his imposing stature and vibrant scales that shimmered under the light, spoke passionately about his people's division over the war with humans. "There are many among my kind who despise the conflict," Zorax explained, his voice a deep rumble. "They, like me, believe in coexistence, but our leaders are blinded by old grudges and fears." Jonah listened intently, weighing each word. "Your insight is invaluable, Zorax. With your help, we might be able to bring this to a peaceful conclusion, but we need to be ready for all outcomes." With Zorax's assistance, Jonah formulated a daring plan to target the Grexian High Command directly. If they could overthrow the militant leaders, perhaps a new, more peaceful leadership could take their place. This covert operation would require an unprecedented level of cooperation between humans and sympathetic Grexians. Dubbed Operation Unity, the plan was risky, with the potential to either drastically shift the balance towards peace or plunge both species into deeper conflict. Meanwhile, Dr. Lena Morris and her team continued to refine the quantum destabilizers, enhancing their capability to breach Grexian shields. They integrated Grexian technology, shared by Zorax, to develop hybrid weapon systems. This melding of technologies symbolized the burgeoning alliance, a fusion of ideals and capabilities aimed at a common goal. Training for Operation Unity commenced under strict secrecy. Human soldiers and Grexian dissidents trained side by side, learning each other's tactics and technologies. Captain Michelle Zhao, now promoted to major in light of her successes and leadership, took charge of the joint training sessions. These sessions are more than just training, they are a bridge between our worlds, she told her troops, watching humans and Grexians navigate obstacle courses together. Trust is the armor that will protect us in the battles to come. As the preparations advanced, public sentiment began to shift slightly. Broadcasts of human and Grexian soldiers training together, combined with stories of bravery and cooperation from both camps, started to quell some of the fears. Peace rallies supporting the alliance gained momentum, providing a counter-narrative to the war drums that had been beating for months. However, not everyone was convinced. Isolated attacks on Grexian civilians by radical human groups, and vice versa, threatened to undermine the fragile progress. Each incident was a stark reminder of the deep-seated prejudices and fears that still simmered beneath the surface. Jonah and Zorax spent long nights strategizing, often debating heatedly, but always coming back to a mutual understanding of the stakes involved. They were not just planning a military operation, they were attempting to rewrite the future of interspecies relations. As Operation Unity neared its execution, the weight of their task became ever more apparent. They were on the cusp of something monumental, a chance to foster peace through the ashes of conflict. Yet the looming possibility of failure cast a long shadow, a reminder that in the quest for peace, the cost of failure could be catastrophic. The weeks leading up to Operation Unity were tense. Earth cities braced for potential backlash, with increased security measures and emergency protocols in place. Despite efforts to foster a sense of unity, the undercurrent of fear and distrust between humans and Grexians remained palpable. In one of the major incidents that underscored this escalating tension, Dr. Lena Morris was kidnapped by a radical anti-Grexian faction. They demanded the cessation of all human-Grexian collaborations and the immediate dismantling of the hybrid weapon systems. The news of her abduction sent shockwaves through the global community, threatening to derail Operation Unity before it even began. Jonah, who had come to view Lena as not just a colleague but a pivotal figure in the fight for peace, was shaken. He convened an emergency meeting with his top advisors and Zorax. It was clear that the kidnapping was a calculated move to instigate fear and halt their progress. "We can't let this act of terror stop us," Jonah declared, his resolve hardening. "We proceed with the operation, but our first priority is to rescue Dr. Morris. She is key to our success." Major Michelle Zhao was tasked with leading the rescue operation. Utilizing intelligence gathered by both human and Grexian sources, they traced Dr. Morris to a fortified compound in the outskirts of what was once Paris. The area, now a shadow of its former glory due to the ongoing tensions, served as a stark backdrop for the rescue mission. Under the cover of night, Michelle and her team, consisting of elite human commandos and Grexian warriors, infiltrated the compound. The operation was tense, with each step forward met with the potential for lethal confrontation. Through a combination of tactical prowess and the element of surprise, they breached the compound's defenses and successfully rescued Dr. Morris. "I knew you wouldn't leave me behind," Lena said to Michelle, her voice a mix of relief and fatigue as they made their way out of the hostile zone. With Dr. Morris safe, Operation Unity resumed full throttle. The world, having watched the daring rescue unfold through global media coverage, rallied in support once again. This successful mission served not only to save a key figure, but also to demonstrate the effectiveness and necessity of human-Grexian cooperation. Back at the command center, Jonah and Zorax reviewed the final plans for Operation Unity. They were aware that the eyes of the world were upon them, with many hoping for a breakthrough and others expecting a catastrophe. Our actions in the next hours will define the future of our species, Zorax. Let's make sure it's a future where peace is possible, Jonah said, extending his hand to Zorax, who clasped it firmly. Yes, for both our peoples, Zorax agreed, his voice resonant with the same hope. As D-Day approached, cities across Earth held their breath. The streets, usually bustling with life, were quieter, with families staying indoors and community centers hosting vigils. Across the globe, people watched, waited, and hoped that the dawn would bring not just the sun, but a new era of peace. The stage was set for Operation Unity, a bold strike at the heart of the Grexian military command, aiming to topple the warmongering leaders and install a government willing to negotiate peace. As Jonah and his alliance prepared to launch the operation, the tension was palpable, mixed with an unspoken prayer that this would be the end of warfare, not the beginning of a greater conflict. The final preparations for Operation Unity were tense and meticulous. The strategic objective was clear: infiltrate the main Grexian fortress on their home planet, a formidable structure orbiting a barren moon in the Grexian system. This fortress was the nerve center of their military operations, and a successful strike here could decisively shift the balance of power. Under the cover of a meteor shower, Jonah's forces, along with Zorax's Grexian dissidents, approached the fortress in stealth ships designed to mimic space debris. The silence of space was a stark contrast to the storm of emotions among the crew as they readied themselves for what could be the most significant battle of their lives. As they neared the fortress, Dr. Lena Morris activated the newly enhanced quantum destabilizers. The shields around the fortress flickered and failed, a testament to the effectiveness of the hybrid technology developed from combined human and Grexian efforts. With the shields down, the task force launched a barrage of precision strikes aimed at disabling the fortress's defensive capabilities. Jonah and Zorax led the first wave of the assault, boarding the fortress through the breach caused by the orbital strikes. The Grexian defenders, caught off guard but quickly recovering, engaged in fierce combat. Blaster fire and energy weapons lit up the dark corridors of the fortress as both sides battled for control. In the chaos, Zorax played a crucial role. His knowledge of Grexian tactics and command codes allowed Jonah's team to bypass security protocols and advance toward the central command hub. Despite their progress, the resistance intensified, signaling their approach to the heart of the enemy stronghold. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the global audience watched with bated breath. News feeds from the front lines provided real-time updates, and for many, it felt as though the fate of two civilizations hung in the balance. As they reached the central hub, Jonah and Zorax confronted the Grexian supreme leader, a formidable figure clad in ornate armor. The confrontation was intense, with Jonah communicating through a translator module, trying to persuade the leader to stand down and end the conflict. "You have a choice," Jonah asserted, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. "End this now, or continue a war that will only lead to more loss, more destruction." The Grexian leader, unmoved by Jonah's words, launched an attack, igniting a fierce duel. The battle was grueling, pushing Jonah to his limits. Just as the situation seemed dire, Zorax intervened, saving Jonah from a fatal strike. Together, they overpowered the Grexian leader, bringing an abrupt end to the combat. With the supreme leader defeated, Zorax addressed the remaining Grexian forces, urging them to cease fighting and consider the possibility of peace. Influenced by Zorax's standing and swayed by the defeat of their leader, the soldiers slowly laid down their arms. The victory was hard won, and as Jonah stood in the command hub, he felt the weight of every decision, every loss that had led to this moment. The battle might have been won, but the war for peace was just beginning. With the Grexian military command now under control and the hardline leaders captured or subdued, talks of peace began. Human and Grexian diplomats convened on neutral ground to draft a treaty, ensuring the cessation of hostilities and the beginning of a new era of cooperation. In the quiet aftermath of the siege, Jonah found himself standing in the now peaceful command hub of the Grexian fortress. The remnants of battle lay scattered around him, broken consoles, scorched walls. Yet, amidst the silence, the air was thick with the promise of new beginnings. He approached the captured Grexian supreme leader, who was now under guard but unharmed. Jonah's face was a mask of resolve as he initiated a dialogue, seeking to understand the motivations behind the Grexians' initial aggression towards humanity. The leader, whose pride was clearly wounded, spoke of ancient fears and prophecies about human expansionism that had been ingrained in Grexian culture for generations. You see us as invaders, but we've always seen ourselves as survivors, the leader explained, his voice tinged with a mix of defiance and resignation. Our actions were guided by the will to protect our people from a future we believed was inevitable. Jonah listened, his expression softening slightly. And yet, in trying to prevent a perceived threat, you almost brought about your own destruction. We can offer you security, cooperation, and peace. But it has to be built on trust, not fear. The discussion marked a turning point. It was broadcast across Earth and the Grexian Empire, showcasing the potential for a peaceful resolution even from the depths of conflict. This transparency was crucial in garnering support for the peace process from both human and Grexian populations. Meanwhile, Zorax became an intermediary, bridging the gap between the two species with his first-hand experience of both cultures. His role was instrumental in facilitating deeper understanding and cooperation. As the treaty formalities were being drafted, Jonah took a moment to step away from the negotiations. He walked through the corridors of the fortress, each step echoing in the vast emptiness. Coming upon a large window that looked out into the star-filled cosmos, he paused, his thoughts drifting to Maya. It was for her, and all the lost innocents, that he had fought so hard. Back on Earth, Dr. Lena Morris continued her work, now focusing on using the technology developed during the war for peaceful purposes. The quantum destabilizers were repurposed to help in energy production, which could solve many of Earth's looming resource issues. Her efforts were a testament to the idea that the tools of war could be transformed into instruments of peace. In time, the treaty was signed. The event was marked by a ceremony attended by leaders from both species, held on a neutral space station orbiting Earth. The treaty not only formalized the cessation of hostilities, but also laid down the laws for a joint council that would oversee human-Grexian relations moving forward. As the leaders shook hands with Jonah and Zorax standing side by side, there was a palpable sense of hope. Cameras flashed, capturing a historic moment that would be remembered as the beginning of a new era. The celebrations that followed were global and joyful, with streets filled with people from all walks of life. Humanity had not only survived a brush with interstellar war, but had managed to turn a potential catastrophe into a stepping stone towards a united future. As the sun set on this monumental day, Jonah stood among the crowds, feeling a mixture of relief and melancholy. He knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but for the first time in a long while, he felt a genuine hope for the future. A future where his granddaughter and generations to come could live in a universe not defined by fear and conflict, but by curiosity and collaboration.